Welcome to the webinar All on X Instagram versus Reality. This lecture is being co-presented by Dr. Wendy A. Clark, DDS, MS, and Tremaine Watkins, CDT. And we will begin shortly. And now it is with excitement that I get to introduce our co-presenters this evening. Dr. Wendy Clark completed her undergraduate training at the University of Georgia and earned her doctoral degree from Marquette University School of Dentistry. She then earned her master's degree in clinical dentistry and a certificate in postgraduate prosthodontics from the University of Alabama at Birmingham School of Dentistry. Dr. Clark practiced prosthodontics, say that 5 times fast, for 7 years with Team Atlanta and lectured nationally on a variety of topics, ranging from smoking cessation to dental implants. She was named a leader in continuing education by Dentistry Today. And currently, Dr. Clark is a full-time faculty member at UNC Chapel Hill Department of Prosthodontics. And our Tremaine Watkins has been working in the dental industry for more than 30 years after graduating with a Bachelor of Arts from Trinity College in Issaquah, Washington, as class valedictorian. He has gained extensive experience in all aspects of fixed and removable restorations, with an emphasis on implant-supported and retained restorations. He also has provided clinical support for case planning, troubleshooting, and implant placement. He has trained other technicians in all aspects of dental technology and has written and lectured on several aspects of restorative dentistry. And tonight, Dr. Clark will talk about the realities of some All on X cases, and then Tremaine will jump in and discuss a guided protocol. And with that, I get to say, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thanks to social media, we now have a phenomenon called Instagram versus reality. And so basically, we can make our lives look any way we want to, even if it's not necessarily exactly true. So I can put on all the filters on my Zoom screen so I can look as young as my dental students and blend right in. And this is not limited to our personal lives, but has also infiltrated our dental lives. And I think of all the procedures that this affects the most is the All on X for our Full Arch Friday cases. So I'm going to show you some of the behind the scenes of my Full Arch Friday cases and kind of dig into what that really means. And we'll start with David. David had maxillary and mandibular edentulation and immediate provisionalization, dual arch. And you can see here, this is his day of surgery, smiling picture. You can still see a little bit of the heme. And his before was phenomenal. So this was kind of a before and after that really just wows when we put it in our advertisement. This is a close-up of where we started. Not too shabby for our change, right? Like this is a really nice day of surgery photo. But the behind the scenes is his medical history was so complex that we had to divide that into 2 full day surgeries. So this was probably 20 hours worth of surgical and restorative to get him from start to finish. It was not one of those 1.5 hours that we show on Instagram. Next, we have Michael. He gave us a phenomenal testimonial, really life-changing treatment. This was his smile, full maxillary zirconia. He had the zirconia bridge on the mandibular as well. This was his before. Again, classic presentation of the patients that we would see in practice. Non-restorable dentition, ailing teeth, not comfortable. Again, beautiful result. These are maxillary mandibular FP1 zirconia bridges, very cleansable, very maintainable. This is the side I don't like to show. For the 6 months that we were letting our implants integrate, I had these conversion dentures that didn't convert as beautifully as I liked them to. So he was not super thrilled with his provisional phase, but we got from point A to point B. But I will conveniently leave those slides out when I post my before and after. Next, we have Zena. Zena is probably one of my favorite patients I've ever treated in my entire career. And we have her before and after, life-changing results. Again, this is maxillary mandibular zirconia, all on X. And this is her after phase, monolithic 3Y zirconia, magic. So the part that I like to forget but never will is the anesthesiologist didn't even make it in to start sedation until after lunchtime. And we did a dual arch surgery and a double arch conversion. I got home after midnight and I was pregnant. So I was a very unhappy camper equilibrating that occlusion. But the one that we're going to spend the most time with is Linda. Linda was another dual full arch case, and she is the patient that finally convinced me to switch to digital dentistry. Linda came in like this, and it was about 2012. So it was well before I was getting involved in digital dentures and digital workflows. And her maxillary bridge, when she would open and close her mouth, the bridge would move with her mandible, her maxillary bridge would, because it was being held on by, I think, one or two Sharpie fibers around tooth number 11. And it was just ready to fall out of her mouth. And this is kind of showing that movement that we would see when she would bite up and down, the bridge would follow. And she wanted treatment fast. She came in and she was afraid that she would lose her teeth in her sleep and swallow her bridge. And she had this real fear. She came to see me on a Friday, and I always used to say, I think I was the only dentist working Fridays in Atlanta. So she came in and she's like, I'd like these teeth out in a denture today. And we did not have a removable tech. We didn't have 3D printers back then. And so I couldn't figure out how to do it. I like racked my brain from all the tricks I learned in residency, and I could not think of any way to get an impression of this maxillary arch without pulling out those teeth. And I don't do extractions, so we weren't going to do that. Our solution was not the best one, but I referred her to a colleague in a little bit west of me at an affordable denture clinic where he did have an in-house technician. And I said, great news, my friend's going to work you in. You can leave with teeth the same day, and we can resolve your problems. And so she went, and I thought that might be the end of it, but it was not. So she came back to see me about 4 months later, and this was the state she was in. And you can see her ridge is not super favorable for implant placement. We have some epulis fissuratum and some other tissue health concerns that need to be addressed. And she had her prosthesis in. I'm like, this is great. What a change. It's, it looks so much better. And she's like, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. She said the teeth were too small. They were too dark. She wanted big white teeth. They didn't listen to her. And she hated wearing a denture. She said, I need these implants and I need them now. And I said, okay, well, we're going to let you heal. Then we're going to do some planning, and then we're going to do some grafting, and then we're going to place some implants. And she said, what about this teeth in a day? And I'm like, we are not going to do that today. So we start by remaking her denture, and this was the tooth mold that we chose, and she was thrilled. This is the largest tooth mold that they make. This is extra large tooth mold from the Ivoclar mold guide. And she is probably 5'3". And so for this little petite woman to have this big denture, she just loved it. And we wanted to make our patients happy. So after she came to see us, this is about 4 months post-op when we took our CBCT and did our preliminary plan. And you can see, let me see if I can start that from my side too. One of us will get it started. If not, that's okay. But you can see that there's not a lot of bone. We have some big defects. No worries about the video. Lots and lots of resorption. So we planned the procedure virtually, but we didn't do this one guided. Just because of the anatomy, we weren't doing a lot of printed guides then. We didn't have as much printers available. So my surgeon freehanded it, and based on his plan, this was the best he could do. There was no bone. So he calls me into the room and says, great news. We're not going to be able to load today. So my patient that has been dying for teeth for 6 months, I had to break it to her after she woke up from sedation that she would still be in her denture. So cover screws, no healing abutments. This is a true delayed load to try to get that primary or to try to get any stability, because there is no primary stability. And I like to say we put everything in the kitchen sink here. So we have particulate graft, PRGF, collagen membranes tacked into place. And what's really phenomenal is how well the implant placement turned out. You can see where the tacks are. There's some sinus grafting done for future implants. And the implants were placed really, really well for what we had, considering the bone. You can see we maintained a few teeth. These are going to be extracted at second stage surgery. This allowed us to have a fixed provisional on the lower. It's a really nice trick if you can get away with placing your implants around existing teeth, to maintain some teeth, to maintain a tooth supported provisional as well. And I'm glad we at least had one arch stable, because after my surgeon did an amazing job of somehow getting primary closure over all that grafting, we no longer have any anatomy left. So I teach the denture class to the second year students, and my 3 favorite words are support, stability, and retention. I keep saying I'm going to get a tattoo. It says support, stability, and retention, because those words are always coming out of my mouth. And when we have anatomy like this, we don't have any of those 3. She has a V-shaped palate. We can't get any hard palate stability. The vestibule's been obliterated with all the graft material, so there's nowhere for the flange to extend to. And there's absolutely no way to find any landmarks for this to hold on to. And this wouldn't be a problem if we were able to load, but we're stuck with this denture. She was so unhappy for so long. I said, I was bothering my surgeon over and over. I'm like, we got to do something for her, because we're waiting 6 months for healing and she can't wear anything. So he placed these little transitional mini implants in the center of the palate, and we were able to pick those up with a retentive caps. So we made kind of a temporary overdenture out of her denture. And it gave her a little bit of stability for some of the time. The great news is you can really appreciate in the bottom 2 photos, how deep that V-shaped palate was, that the caps were completely within the denture acrylic. So these eventually loosened up over time. They did not osseointegrate. And so before we ended up the second stage, these did come out. At second stage surgery, my surgeon placed a few spare implants because we weren't sure the longevity or prognosis of all of those. More grafting, more PRGF, and this time we leave with healing abutments. So now we're able to start that provisional. I take her maxillary denture that she's been wearing, and we convert that. And this is a very conventional denture conversion. If you saw my other All on X presentation, we take a denture, we open up holes, we pick up cylinders, and we fill them up. This is classic Palomalo, lots and lots of evidence and articles on converting a denture to a fixed bridge. And we did the same thing on the lower. We had a denture made and we converted that. This is, again, before digital dentures. So this is processed acrylic with separate denture teeth. And we were going to let her heal another 3 to 4 months for the new implants to integrate and for the graft to take. In the meantime, she calls me on Thanksgiving morning with her denture broken, and she has a bunch of people coming in from out of town. She's got to get this fixed. Everybody's going to be there. So I go to the office on Thanksgiving Day and we take out her prostheses, and I was shocked at the amount of buildup and plaque and tartar and everything underneath them. So we had a real powwow about cleaning these, and I told her that if we can't get this better, we're going to switch to overdentures because this is not maintainable long term. And she's like, okay. I fixed her denture. She moves on with her life. In my mind, I'm convinced that this is going to end up being a removable case. She comes back after implants integrate, and we go to torque our multi-unit abutments. And again, this is old school prosthodontics. So we're putting in the open tray impression copings. These all got luted with floss and pattern resin, and then picked up in our open tray impression. I pour these up while the patient's in the chair, and then I mount the cast. I screw her temporary bridges back onto the cast. I use a real face bow and a real articulator, just like in dental school. I see Tremaine nodding. This is where
I
we've
love
gone
that
through.
stuff. Yeah.
this is where we've gone through the war. I will say, as a side note, if you are interested in face bows, the Sam face bow is probably the best one you can get. But again, open tray impression, everything's blended together, face bows, centric relation mounting, all the good stuff. Again, back in the olden days, the dark ages, when I was making my all-in-X's, we did not have milled PMMAs or printed PMMAs for our prototypes. So this was conventionally processed and tried in. So prototypes used to be a lot more expensive. This is, again, her prototype conventionally processed. Oops. And we go to try in the prototype. She loves it, except for the color. She wants it bigger and whiter, which means that we have to do a completely new denture tooth arrangement and process. So she didn't feel comfortable going to the final without a PMMA in the same color match. So at that second PMMA seat, I'm checking all the abutments, and I notice that one of them is a little bit mobile. And this guy up here ends up on the bench top. I will say, I think this is the one time in history that the most misplaced implant is the one that failed. This one was a little bit buckily placed to where we want it. I feel like usually it's the perfectly placed implants deintegrate, and this guy would normally hang in there. So I was a little sad to see it go, but you know, we had 7 others, so we were okay. And now we're going to start to do our final prosthesis. So in all of the workflow, this is the first time digital dentistry gets involved, and it's after I'm done with everything. So the master cast is scanned with the PMMA prototype that gets nested and designed in the zirconia puck and then milled. And so here's our PMMA prototype. And here's our final bleach white prosthesis with the biggest, whitest teeth you could imagine. And this is the retracted view. And this is her post-op radiograph seat. And she came back for her 1-year post-op, and we removed the final bridges for our maintenance. Just as a side note, the American College of Prosthodontists at the time would recommend removing all implant-supported full arch prosthetics once a year to clean them and replace them with new screws. Since then, they've actually changed their stance that the only time the American College of Prosthodontists recommends taking off a bridge is now if you suspect a problem. So there's no longer a specific maintenance protocol recommended for these prosthetics, which I think is interesting. But here at the 1-year post-delivery, you can see that the hygiene has vastly improved. We don't have the buildup that we saw in the provisionals. This is what her tissue looked like at 1 year post-op. I am absolutely thrilled with how far we got with her. So it was, in the end, a victory, a long fought victory. And this is me pregnant again. And she says, I went to my, I was on maternity leave when my assistants delivered her occlusal guard. And so they texted me this picture while I was home on maternity leave that she felt alive. Like we gave her life back with a smile. And I think that's wonderful, but I did not feel alive. I was tired and hormonal, and it was so hard. And I just felt like there had to be a better, more predictable way to do these prosthetics that the patient didn't go for 18 months frustrated with healing and impressions and things not fitting and all that we've gone through. So I finally decided to pack away my trusty friend, my Whitmix 2240 that traveled with me around the world to Chicago. And we're going to try something new with digital dentistry. So I'm going to turn this over to Tremaine, who will tell you how to do this in a way that is far less exciting than me and Linda.
Absolutely. We're all about having a predictable, boring workflow. So let me tell you guys about that. So I'm going to try to be brief this evening. I'll go through all the steps, but I'm going to kind of hit them at a high level. If you have any questions about specific aspects of this, feel free to put them in the chat. So we'll start out with a brief overview of kind of like how we do it. One of the cool things about guided surgery, I think one of my, I don't know, there's a lot of things I like about it. I like the digital and all that fun stuff, but I think the best thing about it from a theoretic perspective is that we start out with a prosthetic plan, and then everything else that we do is driven by that plan, the alveoplasty, the implant position, all that. Not only that, but we can make significant alterations that are necessary during the healing phase and plan them ahead of time and then execute them. So that way, by the time we get ready to start the final restoration, you saw this with what Dr. Clark was doing. She worked really hard to tune up the prosthetics so that when she was ready at the end, the cases were ready to go. But this enables you to do that without it being quite so brutal, I guess. One of the nice things about guided surgery is that the records that you need are not different than what you'd use for diagnostic for an all-in-X case. You need a CBCT scan in DICOM format, a few pictures, especially high smile. For those of you that haven't done this a lot, getting these patients to show you their smile before you do the bone reduction is very, very important, because I guarantee you when they get those gigantic white teeth, they'll remember how to smile. They haven't forgotten. They're just hiding. So you got to figure out some limerick or tell them to snarl or touch their nose to their lip or something. But this photo is critical, because the easiest time to address this is day of surgery, and it gets more difficult after that. I think occlusion is so important with these cases, and we're more than probably any other kind of restoration, we can literally do whatever we want. We don't have to worry about tipping, because it turns out the case is retained by implants. We can set the vertical wherever it needs to be. So I think something that we sometimes do that doesn't give our patients the most service that we could is we'll restore them at a collapsed vertical or at perhaps a comfortable jaw relationship, but not the centric relation that we could do. So I really encourage folks, go ahead and find the vertical dimension of rest and get a nice centric relation bite, because our patients, when they're healing, they kind of have to relearn how to talk, how to chew, all that, because we've changed so much. So you'll never get a better opportunity to take a big swing at the bite and get them into something comfortable. We did a double arch case where we opened the bite 8 millimeters, and we had a great result. Now, the person was severely overclosed, but I'm just saying it kind of gives you an idea of what's possible with these cases. So anyhow, you capture all the records, and then in the laboratory, we align everything, and then we start out with this, designing the teeth that the person will have. And then from that, we plan the alveoplasty, the implant positions, all that stuff. The other thing that's nice about this is if you do want to do an FP1 or something like that, for those of you who've ever tried to freehand implants for an FP1, the window is so small. I mean, if you're off 2 millimeters mesial on a central, good luck getting an emergence profile on that. So it's nice for FP3. It makes the cases so much more restorable, but for FP1, it's a game changer for sure. So once the planning's all done, the laboratory will fabricate all the components that are necessary to do guided. With guided systems, you have the ability to use whatever implant system you like. So you can kind of pick the system that you get the most success with, of course. So this is kind of what you do day of surgery. I'm going to roll some of these together and kind of talk about like the basics of how you do it. If you've never done one before, the flap for guided is ginormous. So when you're planning to do one of these cases, kind of get your head around, I'm going to be doing a big, huge flap. Probably the most important step is indexing. We've done all this great digital work to kind of plan the case. And now what we need to do is make sure we can transfer that plan to the person. So the way we do that is this foundation thing here. and we'll have little components in the kit that allow you to get that in just the right position. There's a little, I love this thing when doing actual cases. There's a little piece that shows the bone that's being removed and the couple teeth that we saved to index it. And it kind of gives you a belt and suspenders like, oh yeah, that looks good. Or, okay, I better repin that bone foundation guide. Because if this is in the right spot, this part at the beginning goes slower than freehand. But once you get this in, you can fly. Because when you're doing the alveoplasty, all you have to do is level it with the bone foundation guide. And that way you'll achieve the exact amount that you planned, the amount that's necessary, like we talked about, so you don't see the transition line, other not awesome things like that. Then you'll go ahead and place the implants guided. Again, this goes very, very quickly. One of the things you'll find is there's these little blue lines. People who do a lot of these, this is a step you want to spend some extra time on because it ensures that when you put the angled multi-unit abutments in there, if you need them, then they'll be easy to get them turned the right way so your holes line up. Because this is the cool part here. So the prosthetic is, the holes are pre-drilled, and then the prosthetic is indexed also to the bone foundation guide. So you don't have to worry about trying to hold the person's jaw closed or whatever. You can literally seat it on the bone foundation guide and then pick it up with resin. And then this is kind of the divide and conquer phase. You do the pickup with the flap open. So the surgeon can then profile the bone, shape things up, doing necessary grafting and suture, while the prosthetic person finishes up the prosthetic. And these are pretty easy to finish. The intaglio is already flat, which is nice. So mostly what you got to do is fill voids, cut some little arms off. We do 2 of these. So there's a spare one that you can use as your impression component for the final restoration. So this step, again, goes very quickly. Once you get once you've converted both the provisionals, you can kind of pick the one you like the best and deliver it. For those of you that haven't done this before, that could be kind of a two-handed thing because you sometimes need somebody to move the floppy tissue around so you get access to the MUAs, and then the other person can run the screws in. You'll want to equilibrate the occlusion. I would recommend gross equilibration at this stage. If there's something that's way off, it would make sense to adjust it, but it's better to bring the patient back in a couple of days because they're feeling pretty beat up by the time we're done with this, and their jaw's sore. They may not be able to close predictably, so you'll get a better result if you do your final equilibration later. This is a little trick. If you haven't heard this before, you can use light body material to fill in the screw holes. For those of you that have done a bunch of these cases with cotton pellets and composite, it's funny, no matter how hard you work to seal that composite, I don't know where it comes from, but saliva gets in there and it turns your little cotton pellet into the gooeyest little ball of goo ever. And so then it's stuck in your screw head. So then you need to take it out. So you're in there with your loops and your little picky tool, and you're like, I'm hating my life. So the nice thing about this is as long as you clean up the top of your temp cylinder so there's not a flange, then you can just poke this with a scaler and pull that little column of impression material right out, and it doesn't get gooey or anything like that. So this is really, I would recommend using composite for the final, but for the provisional, this really is a slick thing. So that's kind of what's involved on a, again, 30,000 foot view of a guided surgery case. And a lot of what makes it nice is you're completing the case to the plan that you already made. So again, let's say you decided, I want to open the bite 3 millimeters. That's okay. So the prosthetic is built to the correct bite. And as long as you get the bone foundation guide in the right spot, then okay, I put the occlusion where I want it. And if it feels a little bit odd, the patient can, again, take those first couple days to get used to it. So this is really, I think you'll find this makes it more predictable. I find it takes, once you get used to it, it takes about a half an hour to finish 2 of these. So that's not too bad. So one of the things that I think guided surgery helps with is the final restoration, which is kind of counterintuitive. I know for some of you that have done a lot of these, you'll find the patient's wearing a provisional. And now that we have some cool digital workflows, there are ways that you can take that provisional and use it as your template. But before about 3 years ago, you're starting all over, because any plan that you come up with that involves taking the screw retain provisional away from the patient is probably not going to be a top seller. So you're like, okay, I got these teeth. And a lot of times the teeth in the provisional are based on where the patient used to be. Like maybe it's an immediate denture set to the patient's teeth or something like that. But when you're starting with a bite block and a verification jig, you don't have any of that. So it's like you're starting over. One of the cool things with this is that because you have the 2 provisionals, the second one that you're using to take your impression, that's based on where the teeth used to be. So it's a screw retain prosthetic that shows where your patient's teeth were, and that is kind of our initial try-in. So this is kind of how you do your 3 appointments for the final prosthetic. So your first appointment, you're going to do the records. It's interesting. One of the things that I found with this that was been surprising is that I always figured there'd be a huge gap under the prosthetic, but it's kind of interesting when they heal. Most of the time, I mean, it's a little whistly, but I don't usually see a huge space. So a lot of times what you'll need to do is take one of your acrylic burrs and relieve this a little bit to make some space for your master impression. And then you'll deliver the second prosthetic, take the first one out, obviously, and then equilibrate the occlusion if you need to. Take some photos of this. This is a little pearl from a dental technician to you. When you're taking photos, make sure the photos that you're taking are of the thing that you're sending to the lab. So in other words, if you're taking pictures of a, if you're taking pictures of a provisional or something like that that you're sending to the lab, make sure you send a model of that too. Doesn't happen a lot, but every couple months or so, we'll get a case where we have photos of something and a model of something else. And it's not very helpful, because the way we use it is we look at the photo, we look at the thing, and we're like, okay, well, I need to change the angle a little bit like that. So with these cases, it can be a little bit tricky because the patient is wearing a provisional that they're happy with. But if you're sending the second one in, then you want to make sure that you take photos of that. So I guess there's a long answer to a short question. You can take a bite. And again, this is kind of an analog process. You can do a digital workflow with this as well, which is one of the provisionals, but we're kind of talking about the more analog one today. If you want to make small changes to the vertical, you have the full set of teeth. So you can use your leaf gauge and go ahead and make alterations if you need to. And then for impressing the tissue, just use a medium body material and inject from the buccal through to the lingual all across here. And so what's cool about this is that second prosthetic is, if you think about it, it's a try-in, it's a bite block, and it's custom tray all in one thing. So the cool thing about that is that appointment number 2 is your try-in appointment. Well, that's a little bit of a blurry picture. I must have blown that up quite a bit, but you have 2 different options. Most laboratories will kind of go one of 2 ways. Historically, we used to do a screw retained wax up, which it's fine, it's okay. But these days, most labs are doing printed resin try-ins, and those are so much nicer because you can actually send your patient home with it. One of the things that's really important about this try-in is that in the laboratory, when we make the final, what we're going to try to do is we're going to load the provisional, and then we're going to try to copy it as close as we possibly can in something stronger, basically. So when you're looking at these try-ins, you want to be kind of picky with it. You want to make sure that, you know how sometimes you'll get a little shelf if the teeth are out a little bit buccally, or if the ridge is really atrophied. You want to check that and see, what's that shape like? What's the emergence like? How's the buccal corridor? How's his speech? Be picky on these. The other thing that's nice about the PMMAs is that you can actually adjust them. So you can just go ahead and shorten it, put a little mark with a Sharpie. Like for instance, this case, we're hanging down a little bit in the posterior. You could just shorten that cusp right up and say, hey, I need the final that way. One of the challenges is make sure you kind of think about, is this a small change or a big change? If it's a small change, we can go to final and be pretty predictable. If it's a large change, like fixing a cant, moving a midline, changing the buccal corridor quite a lot to get rid of negative space, different things like that, it's better to do another mock-up, because we want, again, we want to get to a point where we're trying to exactly duplicate the try-in. Now, it is possible to go direct to finish from that provisional. If the patient loves it, the bite's good, everything's good, absolutely. But what we find is there's enough changes that the patient's been kind of thinking about it for a few months, and there's usually enough changes to where it's nice to have a try-in to make sure that everything's looking good. If you do a test drive, you should do this when the patient comes back. But in general, you'll want to take a bite over the try-in. The reason being that it's easier to take a bite with teeth, and that gives us an opportunity to fine-tune that bite. Because the patients, I mean, they've been getting used to their prosthetic for months. They're going to be pretty good at biting, and it'll give us the ability to just tweak the bite, and then when we do the final, hopefully it can go in with no adjustment. Seems like zirconia is kind of the secret sauce for this these days, and so it's not that fun to grind on a full arch of zirconia, just so you know. It's not that good for it either. So, and then your third appointment is your delivery. And again, you could do 2 appointments. And if I were a big cheater, I'd say, see, impression, delivery. But realistically, most people are doing a try-in. So this will get you to a final restoration. So your first appointment, you'll do your initial records. Your second appointment is surgery and conversion. Your third appointment is the after healing records with the second provisional. Your fourth is the try-in. Your fifth is delivery. So realistically, I mean, it takes us, a number of months, but you can do this with 5 clinical appointments, which is not so bad. So this is our little wrap-up slide at the end, is that when you use a more predictable process like this, I think you'll find that you're not as miserable during the process. And there's a couple hidden benefits in there. That second provisional that you're using for impressions, it's also a backup. So if something goes a little bit awry and it breaks at Thanksgiving, then you could bring them in, unscrew the broken one, and screw in the other one. So there are some there's some benefits in that too.